Uh,
Look,
I forgot it was Tuesday.
it is.
Yes, that's what I've been told. That's what my iPhone told me this morning. I was like, oh man, we haven't recorded one in like 2 weeks, and I forgot. I know you hit me up about like recording on Monday, but I didn't even, I thought I just had my days mixed up. That's all.
Your hair is growing in pretty long there.
I know I need to get it cut. I look terrible right now. But that's just part of the gig, man. You know, yeah, it's part of the mad scientist gig. You can't be a mad scientist without fucked up hair.
Yeah, true. How'd your the nightly viewing of curling go?
Dude, it was awesome. Uh, look, I'm probably gonna get in touch. Wake up, Eric. I'm probably gonna get in trouble with my wife for this, but there was like a curling babe on there, dude. Like one of the curling girls was like, she was like pretty fine, but she lost though.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think they made it, but she was the darker haired, and I didn't get her name. I didn't get her name, man. My curling babe fantasies will not be realized. I don't know who she is. So.
Well, when you did post the video, I saw Kelly with a voodoo doll of a curling
Oh yeah,
figures.
yeah, yeah.
So
No,
like
I didn't.
we
I didn't mention that while we were watching. She's gonna find out when she watches this, I guess. But
the other comments people were saying on the video was that dog
now,
seems
now,
super
now, now
happy.
my now my Instagram algorithm is gonna be filled with half naked curling girls because I mentioned this.
Hell yeah. If you're lucky, maybe
Uh,
a couple of guys.
the dog. We'll talk about the Instagram algorithm in a second because I did ask Kelly this, like, and this is interesting. We can get back to this if you want, but like last night I'm sitting there and I'm like, look, probably gonna get myself in trouble for asking this, but like, why on my suggested reels as I'm going up Instagram, it's all women in bikinis, like it's all like half naked women in my Instagram reels, and I don't really spend my time looking at that, so I find that interesting like my
Well,
suggested stuff. It's always women, in some sort of like ass shaking going on or some sort of bikini event is happening. But so the dog, like as Linus, uh he's 11 now. He gets super worked up like about stuff, and uh and also my dogs like to play right after they eat in the evenings. And so like they get all fucking worked up, and they had just gotten done playing around. So it wasn't that he was like in distress or anything. He was just he'd probably walked 10 feet and now he's out of breath. So,
well, I've seen those videos where like people's dogs and animals and cats and stuff will watch like TV, like
oh dude,
it
yeah,
react to like theme music or characters they recognize. So maybe
yeah.
maybe Linus was like, man, Curly, it's about time we got this on this house.
Uh, he reacts to animals on the TV. Like we actually can't watch Animal Planet or anything like that. Like, and it seems like every advertisement has a dog in it now. I don't know if you I've been forced to notice that because of him. Um, but like all these, like it's like every other advertisement has a dog in it or a cat in it or an animal in it, and uh, he freaks out at that. I mean, he'll like his hair stands up and he growls and he'll start jumping at the TV. It's the same thing he does with like the horses in the barn. Like we go in the barn and he sees the horse, he does the same thing. Like he's not aggressive. He just like he gets like super worked up about
Right.
seeing animals. So he does that, man. He watches TV. He sees animals on the TV. He freaks out. He'll get up and like make an event out of it. Um, so yeah, but yeah, anyway, there you go. There's like five things. I threw five things out there right
Yeah,
out of the
that's
gate.
what a great
Curling,
episode.
curling babes, Instagram algorithms. If anybody can, again, it's not like I spend my time on Instagram being a creep. Um, but for some reason, and it's also the same thing. Like if I go to like search, search my, um, like search for something. Like the second I hit the search button, it's like the screen underneath just lights up with like internet women, and I'm like, I feel like a creep. Like when people are around, like, oh, look at that dude's
Right.
search thing,
Well, the phone's always listening, so it is kind of weird how we'll have a conversation on a tour bus or something like that, and then literally a couple hours later, I'll see stuff on our phone popping up.
Yeah.
Or
YouTube is the worst about that, actually. YouTube's worse than Instagram about that. Like
do you
it'll
think
it'll pop
imagine
up. Like if I'm talking about something, it'll pop up with that thing on YouTube pretty quick.
which is weird. I picture someone up at like the top watchtower, just be like, all right, we're gonna fuck with this person today, even though they didn't talk about this. We're gonna put this on their thing. We're gonna have their friends
The
question them.
I remember the first time I realized that that was going on was it'd be an interesting experiment to see if it happens again now that I'm talking about it. But somewhere I found, and I don't know, it was probably on Etsy or something. I found this painting called Chewie Knievel, and it was Chewbacca dressed as Evil Knievel. It was a painting. So it's Chewbacca in an Evil Knievel outfit with the gold lanyard around his neck. And it's just called Chewie Knievel. And I bought it for Rickard. I bought one for Rickard. I bought one for me, the Chewie Knievel pictures. And I was telling somebody about Chewie Knievel, and we were in the studio. We are in here. And I forget who it was. Somebody from another band I was producing. And 3 minutes later, he's like, dude, holy shit. Like I just opened up uh I don't know if it was some kind of search, like Google search or whatever, and he's like, look what's at the top of the thing, and it was the Chewie Knievel picture. And I was like, that's not something randomly gets thrown at your,
Right.
uh gets thrown up in your thing. So um but anyway, I think I'm probably at a point where I need to actually not probably at a point. I am absolutely 1000% at a point where I need to check out of social media because I'm not doing too much on it. I'm just looking at it all the time because I'm tired. Like my brain is tired, and
Yeah. It's
and so
a
when I check out, I just start scrolling like because literally it's just mindless, and I just like I'm involved in much like you in like creative things all day, and it's just a lot of brain power, being expended all day. So when I get inside or I get on the toilet or whatever, I want to start scrolling. But one I've tried to remedy that with reading. So I'm reading that cabin book that you sent me
yeah.
right
Yep.
now. And I'm like, okay, man, look, when you go to the bathroom, you know, take a book with you. Don't take, don't take your phone with you. So
Right.
that's been my thing. At least I'm trying to replace bathroom time instead of scrolling with book time. But
Right.
um
It's a book of half naked women building cabins, folks.
that's what it is. It's not even about a cabin. It's just look, I grew up with VHS porn, okay? Like you had like a VHS tape if you want and you had to find it. Like every kid, I don't know every kid, but like I think maybe every kid at some point in the late 90s, or mid 90s, somehow they acquired a porno tape. And it was like it was all the porn you had was whatever was on this tape. And but you had to disguise it with a different name, say like, the best of Morgan Freeman or something,
Yeah.
on the thing like what's something no one would ever watch.
The idea of using the best of Morgan
And so
Freeman in '83 is wild to me.
well, he was on Electric Company. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh,
You
that's
probably
right. He
don't.
was.
You don't remember? Yeah, there was a show called Electric Company. It came on public television right before or after Sesame Street when I was a kid. So this is like late 70s, early 80s. And there was this guy on there named Easy Reader, and he was like this cool, like jive cat who would like teach you how to read and spell. And come to find out, that was Morgan Freeman. That was like his first gig he ever had. So look up Easy Reader, Morgan Freeman, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But yeah, so like the cabin book might just be that. I might just have it says cabin on the cover, but you open it up and it's just like
Yeah. Kelly's like,
big
oh, this
Jew.
is so cool. He's building cabins. In actuality, the guy in the book is named Cabin.
Yeah, it's interesting so far, man. What's the guy's name? Patrick Hutchison is the
Yes,
author.
I think so. Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting because I tend to read a lot of like psychology books and like like things like uh Mark Manson books, like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, like arts, books like that. And so there's a lot of like instructional manual type of books. I don't, I'm not reading instruction manuals. I don't know how else to describe. I guess I could say self-help, but that sounds sad if I'm reading self-help books all the
Like
time.
almost like
But like,
introspective,
yeah,
approach to
like,
life type stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, um, but anyway, so it's interesting to read, like when I read a book like that, because it reads so differently when it's just telling a story, and like you're following it from point A to point B. Um, and that also reminds me, man, that I need to catch up on Eric Bishop's books. as well. Like he sent me his books and the Body Man series stuff, and um, I since I've started reading again, I read really slowly too. Like I have to like I guess it's the ADD thing. I have to like I'll find myself reading and then I'm like, hang on a second, I haven't paid attention to anything for the past. I'll be reading.
Four
My
chapters.
my
Yeah.
brain will be my eyes will be reading and my brain will be thinking about something else and I'll have to go back. I'm like, hang on, I got to go back up here. And I just read pretty slowly. Um but yeah, I need to catch up on his stuff too. So maybe I'll do that. I'll do that probably after the cabin book. I'll get into that. But it's
You.
you know, I enjoy reading though.
Yeah. No. It's Have you? So this is this week or next week? Your album comes out.
Oh, it's this Friday.
Yeah,
That's
it's
why I'm
28th,
busy
right?
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had to make another video. Well, it's not a full
Awesome.
video. Because we decided we're going to release another single, which really wasn't in the plan. But everyone decided, and I've talked ad nauseum about how I have to do this by committee because I don't really know what a single is on my record, right? Everybody's like, "Hey, I think we should release this song." I'm not going to announce it here. I'm gonna wait, let it be
Yeah.
a quasi surprise, but not like anybody would know any different because they haven't heard the record yet. But um, it's one of the songs I didn't have a video for that I hadn't made a video for, and I still have three videos to come out from that series that I made. So we're gonna have videos coming out after the record's out too. Uh, but so it was like kind of all hands on deck. Like, what am I gonna do about a visual for this? And they're like, well, just make a visualizer video. I don't know if you've seen these or not, but people will just make visualizers where it's like there's no particular plot. It's just like a visual thing to go with the song, and it's sort of like a lyric video, but it might repeat, like the visual might repeat every chorus or something. So I came up with a concept for it, but it involves me filming myself doing performance stuff and then trying to tie it into the concept of the other videos. And so I've just been like kind of working feverishly on that because I have to have it out by tomorrow, the next day. I guess it is
Right.
Tuesday, so Wednesday, Thursday, I need to have it finished. Um, and and also on top of that, getting ready to redo some stuff here in the studio. So um, it's just been busy, man. So, but yeah, the record comes out
Friday.
on Friday, on the 28th. Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, I've been
Um,
seeing all the press you've been doing. Seems like a gauntlet you're running with everything.
yeah, I got a lot of press every day. And that's why I told you I was like, "Hey man, can we do a short one today?" Because who knows, it'll be short. Probably won't be. We'll probably talk for 2 hours. But because I have an interview coming up today that's with Kerrang Radio in UK, and I want to feel like I'm fresh for those things. Um, because it's a lot, man. It's a lot to kind of delve in and talk about. Uh, you know, I guess maybe it's just me thinking too much about it, but I think it's like difficult to make my creative process sound interesting. It's like, do people really want to like because everyone wants to ask questions about the creative process and how did you come up with this and what's this and what does this character do here and is this record autobiographical? Is it not autobiographical? And how we all those things tie in together. And I feel like I'm just telling the same stories in every interview, but um, you know, I don't know if they're interesting or not. So at least I try to like
Have you ever
stay
told that story
stay
on
up.
here? I believe we were in, I think we were in Amsterdam. This would have been attention,
Hmm.
and I think you and Brent were up upstairs in some catering room, and you're doing this interview, and the interviewer was like, "Now tell me about this. What is this?" Like it was such a
Oh, no, that was the beginning of the attention. Dude, it was we had landed in like we remember we landed
Cologne
and
somewhere.
no, we landed and we drove right to Rock and Ring.
Yes,
Like direct, like we hadn't even like we didn't we landed in the morning
shell
and we got on
shocked.
a bus and drove right to Rock and Ring and pulled into the parking lot. I mean, and the interviewer's waiting for the bus. And I'm doing the first interview with this German. I don't know if it was. I guess it was some kind of vlog because they had somebody filming the whole
Yeah,
thing, and I'm doing the first interview for the Attention record in Europe. Like this is it, and so everyone else clears off the bus to go, and they wanted to do it on the bus because
yeah,
that
yeah.
was the
Of course.
thing. They called it like in Germany they call buses nightliners,
Yeah.
like I guess overnight. nightliners. So I didn't know that either. And I was like, she was like, well, we need to do this on the bus. And I'm like, okay. She goes, because it's called nightliner. And I'm like, okay, what does that have to do with like, I don't know what a night, she goes, your bus, your nightliner. And I'm like, oh, you call the bus a nightliner. And I'm like, she's like, yes. And I'm like, okay. So we went up to the upstairs lounge. Everybody's cleared off. And she, she sticks a, uh, a microphone in my face and like it was the driest thing I've ever experienced. There were like no in-depth questions. It was just, and I, by the way, again, I've been on a flight all night, just got there, jet lagged, so my brain, it's, you're 5 hours, 6 hours off.
Right. You're
So it's,
playing in
it,
2 hours.
yeah, it's 6 hours earlier than I would be awake anyway. Yeah, I'm playing in 2 hours. And, we put on our stage outfits. Like we were ready to go to stage, and like so that's how close it was to for us to play. And she goes, the first question, she goes, "So your new record, do you like it?" Like that was like the first question. Do you like it? And I'm like, yeah, I think it's pretty okay. Yeah, I like it a lot. And there was no elaborating on the questions. It was just dry question after dry question. Like what was it like recording it?
Yeah.
Do you like the heavy songs? Do you like the not heavy songs? Like, and so then it was like, okay, we need to get a video of you coming out of the bus. And I'm like, okay, do you want me to do anything? No, 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 just come out of the bus. And I'm like, okay. So I they wait outside. I walk out of the bus and I look at the camera, and she goes, okay, no, 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 like say something. And I'm like, well, you said just walk off of the bus. It was the most dry, like fucking weird thing, and my brain was tired, and oh my God. Like those are the worst interviews where
Oh,
there's no elaboration on anything. It's like they don't even form a question that you can elaborate on. It's like, but you know, we've become pretty savvy in interviews now to where it's like, especially Brent. Brent's really good at like jumping into whatever, and you just kind of start making it up as you go. Like if I get into an
yeah.
interview like that where it's just super dry, I'll just start talking about the shit I want to talk about at that point.
Right,
And
right. But like for you, it's like, is it easier for you to be in an interview with someone you know and trust have done before, or someone that's new that might bring a different like kind of slant or look to like what you're trying to
uh,
ask?
it depends, man. Like they're both equally rewarding as long as the interviewer is good. I've done some really good interviews for my record, like with really interesting
The
people.
mixtape one was really good
Yeah,
last week.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That was really good. I did Brian at Rockfeed. I did that yesterday,
Yep.
and that guy, like, he's super nice, man. What a
He's
nice
awesome.
dude,
Awesome.
and like, and a really really cool interview. And I had never met him before, but then I did an interview with Shannon Guns, and she and I are really good friends, and that was fun. Uh and Lou Brutus, who I've done several
Yeah.
interviews with, and um
Meltdown.
uh
Yeah.
yeah, dude. Yeah, dude, that was a great interview too. Like it's always fun to catch up with people but then it's the wild card thing about like I don't know what this person is going to ask. Like just Brian being an example yesterday. Like I didn't know that like he dug in deep on everything. Like and he's been a Shinedown fan for a long time. And so we kind of went deep on a lot of things. Uh so it's um yeah, it was it just kind of depends, it depends on as long as again, man, as long as they're asking interesting questions and the interviews I don't like are the ones where I don't know how I don't really know a way to put this. They're almost like they're skeptical of like your talent, or they're skeptical of like of your record, or um maybe skeptical isn't the right word. Uh I mean, maybe they just don't dig it or something. Like those interviews are always weird. It's like, okay, well, like, you know, yeah, those can be odd. I
Well,
did
it's
a really
also
interesting. I did a really interesting one with a guy. I think he was in Sweden. It was in Europe for sure, and um, he we were just talking about stuff. We're talking about the characters, and I've talked on this show too about this. I've talked in interviews about how like in the story there, these characters are going through a lot of things, and one of those characters is Azalea, and she's, in the background, she's kind of has this crisis of faith like throughout her. we're at her journey. She's not trying to find her way back to faith. She's thrown her faith away and she's trying to get through life without it. And and I said, that's kind of like how I, was, and we've talked on here about how I've, found my way back to faith and whatnot. And so this guy then just wants to talk about faith, which was interesting. It was like, I'm here to talk about my record, but this guy's like, he's really interested in, like, he
Yeah.
found something that I said that he was really interested in at that point. Like it was past the music. Like now it's like, well, tell me more about this. And so I kind of started elaborating on it a little bit. And the more I would elaborate, the more questions he would ask, which I found, really interesting. It was an interesting interview because of that. It's probably the most that I've talked about my faith other than on here when you and I talked about it. I don't
Yeah.
really tend to talk too publicly about it unless I'm asked about it. And so uh it was interesting, man, because I feel like I just, proselytized. I can never say that word. Like I talked for about my faith for an extended period of time and um you know I guess you don't want to seem preachy or anything like that, but when I'm being asked about it,
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting. It was an interesting interview. So that was one that I didn't see coming. That was something I had no idea who they were. Don't remember the dude's name. Don't really remember what the show was off the top of my head, but it was just an interesting conversation because of that.
The I just had a new episode of Spirit Talk with Clint Lowry, and
Dude, I love that dude, man.
95% of it was about faith and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, I mean, it was one of the biggest ones I've ever done, and I think a lot of the Seven Dust fans that have like commented or like shared it, were like, to your point, it's like when you put. It's one thing we will hear an artist talk about the new album or single, like you almost have to, right? Like it's part of the. I get it, but when you can talk about something that outside of music, you can kind of like open yourself up to these people a little bit more. Like everyone's reception was like, dude, we had no idea. Like even Clint was on this faith journey, or
Yeah.
that he was
Dude,
willing to
that
talk
guy
about this. Dude, he's such a fascinating dude.
that guy's transformation, man. Like, and
Yeah,
again, by the way, like I I wasn't there to like I'm not speaking from experience with that necessarily. Like every time I've ever had any interaction with Clint, he was always super genuine and nice to me.
yeah.
But I'm just talking to him, realizing the journey he's been on, the transformation he's made. It was is it speaks to a lot of things, man. It speaks to the um look, man, there's a transformation out there for everybody that you can go through if you seek out faith and um I'm not saying that it's going to happen for everybody. I'm not saying that everyone, is it's not meant for everyone evidently, but um it's changing me. Like, I haven't like again, man, it's a journey, dude. It's not look at someone like Russell Brand. It's the same thing. Like you watch that guy just morph into
Yeah.
the greatest version of himself when you thought like look man when the 2000s and stuff
Oh,
with Russell Brand, it was like, dude, this guy's on fire, man. Like this guy is the
he's so
pinnacle
happy.
of,
He's
yeah,
rich. He's
happy and
funny.
and
Married to
edgy
Katy
and all these,
Perry. Yeah.
yeah, dude. Just to realize that, like, no, man, that's like
He's
bottom of the
miserable.
barrel.
He's
Bottom of the
sad. Yeah.
barrel. Like he's gonna, this guy's going to arrive at a new form where he is, tr you know, found his, at least so far found his ultimate calling, and who knows where he'll go from here with it, right? It's the same thing for Clint. It's um, you become more powerful than you thought you could. And I don't mean that in a
Right. Right.
not in a superficial powerful, like, "Oh, I've got all the power." It's not about that. That's not what I mean. You become a force that you didn't know you could be. That's a better way of putting it.
It is
Um,
fascinating to me when anytime it's when you see someone on their faith journey, like finding God or whatever God it is, wherever belief they believe or want to believe, it's like the people that come out and say, "Oh, this is kind of I don't like this version." But anytime you see someone, I don't know how this happens all the time when someone's on like a anti-God journey, almost like, "Yeah, I'm gonna find the devil."
mhm.
Uh, when you those people go on that journey, no one questions it. Where if you go on a journey to find God, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around that because I don't.
Well, we're not in God's realm, man. We're in
Right.
we're in we're in Satan's realm. That's where we live,
It feels like it
and
sometimes.
don't know, but it is that
Yeah,
though. Like it's that's what this
it's just
is.
pure
And
chaos
so
and evil.
yeah, and so you're trying to be a candle in the middle of the darkness all the time. And it's like, but if you get enough candles, you can see, and that's kind of what this is about, is like not everyone is going to find light, and but if enough of us do, we can, you know, that light's pretty powerful, and we can and it's a light that can call to other people and um you know uh dude, and it's a lot of faith isn't easy. We've talked about this before. It's not easy. Faith isn't you know especially like and again, Christian faith and trying to come into that is the interesting thing about Christianity, man, is that it doesn't require any um I don't know the right word. I was going to use the word superficial, but that's not right because I don't want to demean anyone else. That's not the point. It doesn't require any external uh duties. That's a better way of putting it. Like you don't have to, you're not required to, you know, uh uh pray in a certain direction. You're not required to pray a certain number of times a day. There's not a list of things you can do externally, physically, that will equal enlightenment. You know, what is required is faith. That's what's required, and it's wild. It's a wild thing, man, to just go. Uh, you know, I had, I believe in, I believe that these supernatural things occurred, and that this was God who came to Earth and then died on a cross and rose to forgive me for my transgressions because I'm incapable of doing that myself, i.e., I can't do enough stuff to achieve being saved. Someone else has to do it for me. Yeah. So, but anyway, I don't know where I dropped off, man. But I was just talking about how I'm trying to get my train of thought back. I had a place I was going with it. It sucks. Um, but just how the way faith changes you is because it's this internal change, and
Right.
uh, uh, and again, it's difficult. Fuck, man, I'm not gonna get my thought back. We might as well just move on. But talking about, well, we can go back to Clint. Talking about how it's changed him and how you know that or Russell Brand. You can watch it happen in real time, like this internal shift. And oh, I was here. This is what I was getting around to, and this is something I've been thinking about, and maybe you know I'd love to hear other people's comments about this. I watched a video the other day of this guy, and he talked about, and you can probably find it online. It said, I I think it was a reel, or maybe it was a quick YouTube video or something. It might have been a YouTube short or something. But he said that he was praying. This guy's a Christian. He was praying, and it said you're supposed to take God to the movies. This is gonna be This is gonna be weird, seemingly weird, I guess. And he's like, okay, God, let's go to the movies. Like, so he goes to the movie theater. He sits down, and I forget what movie they were watching. Oh, it was an Avengers movie. That's part of the story. I forget which Avengers movie it was. But you're supposed to go to the movies with God. He's like, I go to the movies. I sit down. You know, I'm here with God. We're going to the movies. And he's like, I'm sitting in the theater. There are a few other people spread around, but it's like this dude comes in, and he's dressed in this t Spider-Man t-shirt that's all tucked in. He looks awkward or whatever. And this dude like literally comes over and sits down right next to me. And he's he's like it's like a no-no for me. He's like, I want my spot to watch the movie,
Yeah, of
and
course.
he's like, but it's gonna be rude of me if I get up and move somewhere else. So I'll just sit here and do this. And the guy starts talking to me a little bit. We chit chat, and then at some point during the movie, the guy reaches in and grabs my popcorn and eats it. And he's like that's my popcorn. Like that's my, like I put the butter on it. It's made a certain way. So he's like, I took the popcorn and I put it over here for the rest of the movie. And he's like, the movie's over with, and we stand up and we exchange pleasantries. And the guy goes, he goes, man, he goes, I never real he goes something to the effect of like I never realized how like these superheroes remind me of like the Christian story and like doing good in the world
Yeah,
and
good versus
the guy
evil, and yeah,
and he goes yeah and he's like in that moment I realized me and this guy have like this thing together and I'm like yeah dude I thought about that before like as a he's like I'm a Christian and I believe that like there's something biblical about these stories and uh and and this guy goes, yeah, well, he goes, that's good. We're trying to do good things in the world. And he's like, I went to shake the guy's hand. He goes, hey, I'm so and so. And the guy, he goes, hey, I'm Jesus. And he's like, as I shook the guy's hand, the guy disappears, and the and his drink that he was holding like hits the floor. And he's like, that was actually Jesus. And so my reason for telling this story on here is like my brain went, yeah, right, dude. Like that's the most like ridiculous
of course,
story,
yeah,
right? Okay.
fantasy.
But my brain also went like this. We're talking about the difficulty of faith. I don't believe that story because it's supernatural. It can't happen. This dude didn't walk in and say he was Jesus. He shook his hand and disappeared. Oh, and by the way, the guy said he said, "Hi, I'm Jesus." And the guy before he disappeared, the guy said he's like, "Yeah." He said, "Sorry." Jesus told the guy, he's like, "Yeah, I do this all the time. Like I'm always in the world, like experiencing it with people." And then the guy disappears. Right? Okay. My brain, I go, that's ridiculous. Like, what a stupid story. I'm sure this dude made this up. Why are you making up ridiculous stories? But at the same time, my brain went, why? Well, if you have faith and you believe in the story of Christianity and all of that
Yeah,
happened, why could that not be true? And why could that not be what happened? And maybe this dude is telling the truth. And then you start thinking about the disciples. Like, everyone thought they were nuts. Like the whole thing. And
all of them. Yeah,
I'm looking at this guy going, dude, you're nuts. Like that can't happen. And so I realized in that moment that while I am skeptical of that guy's story, as a believer, I have to leave that door open of like, maybe this guy is telling the truth and maybe that is what happened. And I can't believe, on one hand, you can't believe
it seems
uh,
crazy.
that Christ died on the cross and rose from the dead, and then also believe that he can't just show up in a movie theater. Of course he can, right?
Right, you
And
can't have it both ways.
watch an Avengers movie with a guy and then disappear because that's no more or less supernatural than Jesus appearing
Resurrecting from the dead. Yeah,
to Paul on a road to Damascus and making him blind for 3 days. You know, uh, so it's this is why faith is difficult, man.
yeah,
You're exchanging your rational human monkey brain for the impossible, and in that impossible is the offering of something greater and a greater version of yourself. And so that's why it's so transformative. Not be, and I hate to break it down to like a supernatural and not supernatural way, but that's a really rational way of thinking about it. It's a good way of putting it. It's like you're exchanging you're exchanging this world for another world. You're exchanging this crude matter, this meat suit monkey person that you are, for something that believes in things greater than yourself and in uh, a a way of living and a way of being that is offered to you that is a better internal version of yourself that will then uh, um, uh, transcend your body and be outwardly visible to the world,
right.
meaning the transformation that Clint has gone through, or the transformation that again, Russell Brand, I use that as a great example, and the transformation that I feel like I'm going through. Um, but again, man, it's not like a cure-all. It's not like I don't get depressed. It's not like I don't have moments, and but I still try to stay. And what happens when you get depressed as a person, for me, this is just my thing. When I get depressed as a person who is coming to faith, I feel very distant from God in those moments. Like I feel very like, where did he go? Like what happened to that closeness that I felt? Because you do kind of comes in waves and it works like that. But I think just trying to stay present with that while uh um while I'm going through those moments has been helpful. not feeling like I'm being abandoned or something, you know.
Right.
Uh, uh, and again, not to get, I feel like I'm being preachy. I apologize if I'm being preachy, but I think about the story of when I think about that, there's a story in the Bible of Jesus on the boat with the disciples in the Sea of Galilee, and the storm came up, and the boat's about to be capsized, and they're all freaking out. Like all the disciples are freaking out, and they look up at the front of the boat, and Jesus is just asleep in the front of the boat, and they're like, Lord, aren't you worried that this is gonna, we're all gonna die, blah blah blah. And he's like, I can see him. He kind of gets up. I'm paraphrasing the story, but he gets up and he kind of rolls his eyes and he's like, "Do y'all think I'm gonna let like that I've abandoned you like in this
Right, right.
moment? Like I'm still here, you know?" And so then he just calms the seas and he's like, there, see. And so I feel kind of like that in those moments where I'm in this turbulence and it's really easy to go, well, now you've abandoned me, but that's not
Right.
the case. It's part of the journey. Like we're gonna have to go through these storms to get to the other side. Um, but just again, man, that's what faith has brought to me, and I think it's brought to Clint, and
Have you
I've talked with him about it. I mean, he and I have spoken about it, uh, but it offers you this internal um, compass that you didn't have before that influences the way you think about just about everything, and I think you wear that on your outside when that happens, and that's that's something we talk about the darkness. That's what why it's easier to, if I decided to, if I was on here right now, if you and I did a different kind of podcast and you and I were on here talking about super dark things and like stuff that was cool. We talked before about how like, the devil made like all the dark stuff cool and all the light stuff is
yeah,
not cool, Let's just, but if we were on here talking about all the dark stuff, we might have, you know, many, many more listeners, right? Because it's a cooler thing to talk about.
yeah, of course.
Uh, but that's just what it is, man. And I think that the darkness just always wants to put out the light. And so, uh, you know, it is. I think that's one of the reasons why faith is difficult in this world. I think look, I believe that once we pass on from this world to another, it's not going to be difficult at all to think about the light. It's not going to be difficult at all to think about supernatural things because we are supernatural beings, whether we want to to acknowledge it or not. I think
Right.
that inside of all of us, even inside I think if the most staunch atheist, and I'm maybe not all of them, but I think that if most of them really, really got down to an introspective level and looked at the I think we all know that like this isn't the final form. I think we all know that there's something else inherent, and I'm gonna ramble and go on and on about that.
Have
But
have
again,
you know?
I'm not trying to be preachy, man, about faith. I'm never trying to like push anybody toward anything they're
No,
uncomfortable with.
have you noticed as you've gotten closer to God that your depression has changed at all? I mean, obviously you can still get depressed, but have you noticed like the it's not as dark or it's a different like
No, it's the
recovery?
opposite. Opposite.
So it's almost like
Yeah, it's the
it's like
opposite.
the
And
devil or the dark forces are like you need to stay corrupted, like you can't
yeah,
find the light, Eric.
I think I'm in a battle right now.
Interested for
That's
your
what I think.
soul.
I don't think I'm going to have that story that you hear some people get where it's like, oh, came to faith and then all of a sudden my depression lifted and everything was because I've heard those stories. I'm in a place where I feel like the more that I read and the more that I think about it, the the harder it clamps down on me sometimes. And the waves get bigger. So it's like the highs are higher. Like I feel like I can feel this presence and I often say that the more time that I spend inside of that, or when I do spend time reading and studying, not really reading, like really thinking about what's being taught, that inexplicable things happen, like things beyond coincidence start to happen in my life, and so those are great highs. But then the lows are way more crushing, and um, I've been going through that a good bit, right? And um, I think that is the nature of what we're talking about. Is like, oh, you think you're going to come, in this world, you think you're going to come to faith. You think you're going to become a light. Well, you're going to have to pay for that. and you're gonna have to work for that if that's what you want. I'm saying this isn't God saying this. This is, a darker force saying these things perhaps. Because it feels like that, man. It feels like that's how it is right now. And I talked to you know, Miss Sylvia, the lady that lives across the street from me. Uh, she's a very faith-filled lady. I've talked about her, I think, on here before.
Yep.
She's been through a lot of things in her life, a lot of hard things. But I mentioned that to her one day. I said, "Let me ask you a question." I said, "Why is it that you know um, uh, that I feel like the more that I study and the more that I get into this, the more it feels like evil is coming for me?" And she said exactly what you and I are talking about. She said, "Oh, the devil doesn't want you to to know these things, because if you know these things, that's a little bit less power than he has in this world." And um, so, yeah, man, I really think that's the case. And I wish, I mean, I'm waiting on the day, man, that I feel like my depression lifts a little bit and things get better. Um, but and I thought, here's the thing. To the point that Miss Sylvia made to me, I've had that thought of like, because I'm human. I've had that thought of like, well, I guess this faith thing isn't working,
Right.
because I'm still, you know, and that's kind of what's wanted, right? Like, dude, it's super, super, super interesting, man. Like, again, the fact that people can look around and go, or I don't say people. Let me put this on me. How I looked around at the world and was like, it before. There's no supernatural forces at work. There's nothing happening here that's like we're all just here.
Trying to figure
We've
it
been
out.
we're
Yeah.
just been put on this planet, and we just have to get through life, and bad things happen and good things happen and all. So, but it wasn't until I started this journey that it really started to make me realize like, no, man, there is a push and pull of like the more good I try to do, the more this darkness is pulling harder this way. And it becomes, I don't know, man. It's something I never thought I would experience with this. Like it wasn't like I thought it was just like, oh man, I'm gonna start reading the Bible and I'm gonna learn and I'm gonna you have this euphoric moment when you first start to figure faith out, and it's like, oh man, like I feel great right now. Um, but then you hit that first wall of like, oh no no no, hang on a second, don't you go that way, and this and the darkness starts pulling you back in, and um uh and that kind of throws you, because most people, I don't say most people, a lot of people might not make it past that point of like, oh, hang on a second, now I feel this euphoria is gone and now things are hard again, and I guess there wasn't anything in this faith thing. I'm supposed to have an easy life once I find. And it's like, no, you're not. You have to push past that wall, and you push past that wall, and then the next time that you kind of get this euphoric feeling, it kind of is a little greater than it was the first time.
Right.
But then maybe the fall again, maybe that pull is stronger, and I think this is kind of the wave that I'm on right now, and it's I don't know, man. It's just very it's not easy, but that brings it around full circle. Like faith isn't supposed to be easy, I don't think. And um, because you know, yeah, there's no ladder that you can ascend. Like if again, to attain enlightenment, it is just, hey, you're in this now, and you have to, you need to live this thing for the rest of your life, and uh, in that, you're always going to be pulled at, And dude, you're going to be, and again, the judgment that comes with it too. It's like, people keep an eye on Christians, man, like, waiting on us to screw something up just so they can go,
Yeah.
see, you said you're a Christian, you're a bad person. And, you know, so and dude, isn't it wildly interesting? And my brother-in-law has told me that I'm probably wrong about this, and I'll tell you why. But it's interesting how it's only Christianity, it seems like, that everyone can pick at,
Of
bring down,
course.
tear down,
Of course.
tear apart, make a mockery of. It's not you can't do it with Judaism because that's anti-Semitic. You can't do it with Islam because that's Islamophobia. You can't, it's been made
Correct.
to be, don't criticize anything else. You know, most people leave the Buddhists alone, which I think is good. I think Buddhists have a very good um, way of thinking about the world and way of thinking about themselves. But I digress. But it seems like it's always Christianity that's okay. It's okay to go after Christians, man. It's okay to tear them apart. My brother-in-law says that's a view that, and he's been in the Marine Corps and he's traveled
Yeah, he's seeing some
to a lot of
stuff.
those, a lot of those Middle East and a lot of the
Yeah,
parts of the world that I haven't been to. He said that's maybe I feel that way because it's like that in America, right? Like you're sort of a pariah if you say you're a Christian in pop culture, right? It's like
correct.
you're less than, so to speak. He says that maybe over in other places that maybe it's not seen the same way. I don't know. It doesn't seem that way to me, um, uh, but it's just interesting. It's like, okay, well, if this is wrong, if Christianity is wrong, if the concept of Jesus is wrong, if trying to live a more Christ-like life is wrong, then why is it so difficult? Why is it again that darkness is just always coming after you, you know? Um, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Why,
it's
I feel like if we had it wrong, then the darkness wouldn't care. It wouldn't care about any of it. They would be like, yeah, dude, keep doing what you're doing because that's wrong.
right. And then when you hear,
You
and then
know?
when you hear of like someone that's like a Christian, and obviously there's very bad Christians, but like Christian that shoots up a school or kills their wife or husband, or like when a Christian does something evil, they are the entire idea of Christianity is attacked. Whereas we're not looking at the idea of that maybe these weren't really actually ideal Christians to begin with. Maybe they were hiding under the guise of Christianity. It's like this idea of like Christians are better than you. Like, no, there's faulty Christians. There's
Yeah,
faulty.
but here's the thing, man. I've actually stopped thinking about it that way too. And again, not that I have it figured out, by the
Yeah,
way. But
yeah,
when you're saying like faulty Christians or bad Christians or whatever, it's like rather than thinking about well, that person was represented Christ the wrong way or represented Christianity wrong when they did something wrong. Let's just take not to get too dark with it. Let's just take a pastor that steals money
church.
from the church and
Yeah,
buys jets, right?
hell
In the
yeah.
name of Christianity. Well, we're gonna look at it and go, oh, he was just a bad egg, and not all Christians are like that. Well, I think that it would be very difficult for someone to feign Christianity to build something up to that point to where they can buy jets with the money that's being made, right? Like that's a lot to build a church takes a lot of effort. And I don't think that the person building that church doesn't believe in the moment that they're doing something right. But eventually they end up in the wrong place. And again, uh, but you talk about that dark force that just comes for them. It's like and I'm not taking the responsibility off of the person. Like when you do something wrong, you have a choice to make whether to do the right thing or the wrong thing. But I don't really look at it as like a bad Christian. I look at it as someone who succumbed to that thing that was after them, right? And that darkness just keeps coming and keeps coming. Think about that for a second. Like the person who starts the megachurch doesn't start a megachurch. They start a church.
A charter
And that
church.
church grows into a megachurch. Well, the bigger it gets, what are we talking about earlier? The bigger it gets, the more the darkness comes after you. The more that you exclaim some goodness, the more you put goodness out into the world, the bigger the darkness gets to come after you. And so when you see someone who started a megachurch, they cheated on their wife and had an affair with someone in the church, or they've been stealing church money and they bought jets and giant houses and all of this stuff, and they've forgotten what being Christ-like is about. Not that owning things makes you not Christ-like. I'd be a huge hypocrite, but I'm saying taking the church's money to do that, right? Rather than I think that's where that force got so big that it dragged them back.
Right.
You know, again, but it's just a different way of thinking about it. Rather than this person being a bad egg, it's just like, no, man, like, the evil got you, you know? And again, if you think about it like this dark, that's why people say like, well, why do bad things happen? Why do, you know, I think, dude, the kids getting sick thing or kids getting molested thing is like the thing for me. It's like I look at that and I'm like, why? Like, why does that happen?
Right.
And I think it was John Lennox who put it that way. He said that you know this isn't God's realm. You know, like heaven is God's realm. That's where nothing that's where there's no evil. You know,
Yes, your actions down
and
here will dictate which realm you end up in.
yeah, and so the bad things happening is not God. It's Satan, right? And look, oh man, I feel like I'm preaching, John. I'm sorry.
I'm
Uh,
into it.
but like Job, you read in, the book of Job, which is one of the only I haven't dug into the Old Testament too much. I know a lot about it, but I haven't dug into it too. But reading Job, all these bad things happen to Job, but it's not God doing it to Job. It's Satan did it to Job. You know, thinking that God was going to look, or Job was going to look at God and say, "Why did you do this to me?" Which he does eventually, because we all do that. But that's the lesson that's in that story, you
Right.
know, and is it wasn't God didn't do this, Satan did this, and so um, we're not in that realm, man, and um, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm learning, man. I'm an infant in this thing and trying to figure it out. And by the way, all that stuff being said, man, I have questions, man. I battle with it, but I try to put on this armor or this coat every day of like, just try. You'll never achieve it, but just try to be more Christ-like in your daily life.
Yeah.
Um, I fail at it a lot, man. I have a short temper, I get aggravated by things. When I'm super in the middle of depression, dude, don't think that I don't look at God and go, "Why are you doing this to me? Why is this happening?" Like just like an idiot, like a fucking monkey, screaming at the fucking clouds.
Yeah.
It's like I wildly fail at it a lot. But um, dude, I look at someone like Clint as he gives me a lot of hope, man. He's a good guidepost because that guy he's exclaiming his faith. I haven't gotten to that point yet of like really like being able to feel like I can, you
Yeah.
know, like say that I'm a Christian. It even feels weird saying that just now. Like I don't know how to. I feel like I'm still kind of arriving at that point or whatever. But uh, again, man, looking at him and looking at someone like Russell Brand gives me hope for um, you know, uh, that type of existence is possible. It's not easy. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it
Right.
just that arriving at that sort of at that place is out there, and um, you know, and I just want to use that to help other people. That's how I'm with everything, man. I'd love to use the things I have to help others, um, but you know.
Yeah. The
Dude, again, man, I shouldn't apologize for it. I won't apologize for it. I should
you
not be
will.
apologetic for it.
Yeah, you will.
I just again, man, it's like you run the risk of sounding like you're being preachy, and I don't ever want to be preachy to people. But
The the other thing this weekend, I was talking to some neighbors and friends of ours. We were at something, and the discussion came up of we all have. I think each person has their own like unique set of like potential. Like if you don't
hmm
use your potential, it just kind of it's I think we all agree that we get frustrated when people have a certain amount of potential, they don't use it to like
hmm
whatever they're doing. And so we were trying to figure out if how cool would it be if people that choose not to use their God-given potential, like that type of potential could go to like store it somewhere and someone else can grab it. Like how cool would that be if like people that have like the ideas but they don't have like the courage maybe necessary to follow through with it, but they have like
mm.
the gumption and energy to want to do it. Like it just I don't know. It was just an interesting discussion about like what potential is versus what can come from maximizing your potential and what cannot come from not using it.
Where did you all arrive with it? Like,
I think we
what
all
was
agreed that
the thought?
it'd be super unique if you the fact that people don't use their potential is what's very disheartening. I mean, I think the world, if we all agree that the world would be better off if everyone used their potential to make a change that's positive. But the ones that don't use their potential, that have all this talent, than just kind of like the blame game and stuff like that. I wish there was a way to use that energy they're not using and that potential and give it to people or ideas or organizations that want to make a difference in the world but can't because they don't have enough of that said potential.
Hmm.
It's such an interesting thing, like the wasted ideas and creativity that just like dies on the vine because
Yeah,
people don't want to fall
but
through
do,
with it.
but does it like just to get, since we haven't been woo woo enough on this episode, let's get woo woo some more, which is um something that Rick Rubin talked about, which I have experienced in a small way, which is he feels like when you get a song idea or you get a unique idea, an invention idea or a book idea or something flashes into your head, which I've got my phone is riddled with
Yeah,
these
same.
ideas, and my journal is riddled with these ideas. Well, again, this is woo-woo land, but since I believe we live in a metaphysical world, um, that is that idea like going like, hey, like, hey, you, here it is. Do this thing. I want, I'm coming to you. Like I'm passing the frequency is passing by and your antenna has picked it up, right? Because these things fly out of nowhere. They seem to, anyway. If you don't tune into that thing and do it, it's just going to go on to somebody else who will do it. So I don't know if the potential is being wasted. It's just there's a limited amount of great ideas out there. There's a limited amount of positive. I'm not saying the potential is limited. I'm saying that perhaps like these things are passing through the ether at all times. And whether it's a lyric or a song idea or something that if Brent and I are in here writing or I'm in here writing by myself and we can capture that thing and put it into a song that becomes 365 or
Dance
you
Kid
can
Dance or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, or you can grab something that's passing by and you take it and it becomes stay hungry. It's like, well, what if you hadn't grabbed that thing as it was passing by and you just written it down and let it go on and not done it? It ends up down the line at somebody else who grabs it and goes, I've got this great story idea, about this werewolf and this tank battalion and blah, blah, blah. It gets passed on to somebody else and they do something with it. And uh, that's been, I have a song on my record called New Graves. And when my record got finished, I sent it out to, this is a couple of years ago. I sent it out to a few people. I sent it to you. I sent it to
Yeah.
Ben from Asking. I sent it to Clint. I sent it to Phil Dimmel. I sent it to Josh Sturm, just to see what people thought about it. And some people looked at me like I had five heads, and some people really liked it. Josh was one of those people that really liked it, and he so I never put the record out. As we talked about the story, I just sat on it and sat on it and sat on it. I wasn't sure I was going to put it out, and he sent me a song by this girl K-pop group, and he goes, "Hey, this song sounds exactly like New Graves. Like he's like it's scary. He's like and he's like I thought you should hear it. I never listened to it because I didn't want to hear it. But what that did is that thing went off and I was like, you haven't put the record out, idiot.
And now
Like
people are going to start grabbing Azalea. They're going to start grabbing.
right, like this idea that you had wants to be born for even if it's just that one song and someone else is grabbed it and like his is you know
Right.
doing something with it. Like that thing has arrived in Korea halfway around the world. And, because you didn't do it, someone else is doing it, And so that's how I thought about that. And dude, that's honestly the moment that kicked me into, I got to put this record out. Like it has to come out. And that was, that was over a year ago that Josh sent me that. But like, it really kickstarted me. I was like, oh, so the potential isn't lost, I don't think. I think it just that thing moves on to someone else. I mean, Chris McLaren talks about how uh in this was in the late 90s, early 2000s, he had the idea of having a treadmill with a screen on it that you ran and it looked like you were
Yeah.
running through the woods. And he's like, He's like, I took it to my, his dad is an entrepreneur. His dad owns a lot of, started a lot of companies. And
Patents
he's
and
like, I took it to
stuff.
my dad, and my dad thought it was ridiculous and it would never work. And then fast forward to like, 10 years later, that's like a multi-million
Correct.
dollar idea, probably billion-dollar idea
Right.
that, that, that someone else picked up. That idea didn't go away. It just,
Yeah. Well, it seems like when I guess when I started looking at it, it's like when the first person, the caveman that created fire. And
mhm.
then from fire, there was like electricity and plumbing, and so as stuff started getting created and used and adapted, and put out there. The permutations of each creation, each thing put out there, spawns off on itself. But
Yeah.
as we get older into like where we are now, it's like I feel like and this goes back to when we talked about episodes ago, where it's like why certain scientists and backgrounds were stopped in the evolution of science and stuff like that. But like where these permutations started to die off at the end. Like you can't get any further with water or electricity or light or sound. So it's like
Well,
I don't
maybe
know.
but maybe you can, and we just don't know it,
Yeah,
right?
that I guess right. It's like, but it's just like the first guy. Like who's like when I look back, if you look at the first person that created fire, or maybe Tesla or Edison, that first cool thing like the car. How many times that idea went through the minds of other people, yet those individuals had the balls to, no, we're doing this. Like it does kind of blow my mind because there's not that many people back then compared to today, right? So this
Yeah.
idea, hive mind mentality, seems so crazy back then.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean the like someone like Henry Ford, well, not Ford, who was it? The guy that Mercedes invented the car
Yeah.
in Germany.
Oh, look at the Wilbur
Uh,
brothers with planes and stuff like that.
right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Orville and Wilbur Wright.
Yes.
They were bicycle manufacturers.
I almost
They
thought you
made
said you
bicycle.
were going to say bisexual facturers.
That too, perhaps.
Yeah.
Uh, but you know, look, we all know. Here's the thing: we all know they knew flight was possible. They watched birds fly. Flight is
Correct.
possible. I think that's it. That maybe is it in a nutshell. We don't know what's possible. We can't think past what we've seen, and that's why people who have real genius can think past what they know and have seen. Like that's why Da Vinci is so revered. Like this guy is way back in history drawing
Oh,
hel possible helicopters and flying machines and manufacturing machines and things that he most of which he never built. He just had ideas for. So when it's
cave drawings of UFOs from like Incas and Aztecs and Egyptians. You should have
yeah,
no idea what that is.
right.
Oh,
But so like you can think about it this way. Like Orville and Wilbur Wright knew flight was possible, so they had an aim point. They had something to aim for. We're going to aim for flight. We're going to figure it out, And eventually they had they it through trial and error and through many different things, they were the first ones to realize that, that the air passes more quickly if you make a wing that's shaped like a teardrop rather than a plane.
flat
You do
across.
this, the air is going to pass faster underneath on the flat surface than it is trying to go over the top of this, and it's going to create lift, and you're going to be able to take off. But they knew, but what caused them to arrive at that, I think, was the fact that they knew what they were aiming for.
Got it. Which makes
Well,
sense.
so what do you, the reason why, like, I think about this, it's a great thing because I've actually been thinking about this recently. I look at a cave painting and I'm like, man, that is so primitive. And it looks like it's just finger painting, like a 5-year old could do that. Like, not even like a 2-year old would paint that. And
Right.
yet these are adults doing this. Now we've arrived at a place in 2025 where people make hyper realistic paintings and drawings, like with ballpoint pens, where it's like
Yeah.
you can't tell that it's
So
not
you
a
have picture
photograph,
or right.
right? Well, how did like why did no one back then think that like, oh, I can do this, I can do this hyper realistic thing? Well, it's because they didn't really know it was possible. You know, I think that as we progress, technology progresses because it's like, oh, that's possible, then this is possible. And it's this incremental thing that happens, It's like we can't just take these big leaps into, um, into wild, smooth technology from primitive things. We have to go through these steps because we're letting each one of us is, you know, if it's art, maybe you're making it okay for the next person to do something that they thought wasn't okay before because they'd be ostracized for it. It's like, if you were a painter during the Renaissance, you had to do these oil portraits that were very formal and this whole thing. Someone like uh, um, you know, Dali or somebody like that or Picasso would have been such a foreign concept to someone in the Renaissance, right? But eventually, somebody in that order made some sort of abstract art that people loved. And that made it okay for the next person. Oh, I can do this. I can make abstract art. Cool. Now I'm going to make something more outlandish than that thing was. And eventually you end up with this very rich, wide open art. We Art is so wide open now that you and I've talked about this that maybe some of the art isn't even art. Like it's just like a toilet bowl
Correct.
attached to a wall, a toilet seat attached to
It's
a
a
wall.
junk drawer you threw on the floor.
Right. But again, we've evolved to make those things okay. If you look at it in the technological sense, you know, uh, uh, and I don't know, remember who the guy was that had made the first car. I know his wife is the one who made it public. Like he made this car and he just had it sitting in a garage, and his wife took the car out driving to show everybody because he wouldn't do it. Uh, but anyway, ultimately ended up being the Mercedes company. But the guy that built the first car didn't build a Bugatti. He didn't build a Formula One car. He built probably a pretty inefficient, shitty gasoline engine car,
Right.
and that sputtered and popped and barely went a mile an hour. Um,
Is this the Le Marquis
but
by Frenchman de Dion?
no, this is Germany. I thought it was I thought it was
1884 was the first oldest running automobile.
okay. Maybe that's what it is.
1920 was Carl Benz,
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. But
Germany.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right. But it was something. It was a story where his wife. It might have been the French thing. It might have been a story where his wife took the car out and drove it around, and that's how people saw it for the first time because he didn't want people to see it because he thought it was imperfect. Anyway, uh, but he didn't make an F1 car. He made that thing first. But then by him making that thing, the next person saw, hang on, this is possible. Well, let me refine it. Let me refine that. And it gets refined on down the line until you end up with an F1 car, or you end up with a jet car, or you end up with whatever. I mean, airplanes, again, Orville and Wilbur Wright with the Wright Flyer, and now now Elon Musk is sending that whole progression has led to privatized space flight and Musk sending and Bezos sending privatized rockets up to the space station. Um, so there I forget how we got off on this, but there is that progression that happens, and so when those ideas are flying by you, um, if you don't grab them, they're going to go on to somebody else, and then they're going to get. But once that idea happens, once someone latches onto it, that's the thing, having the courage to latch onto it, like what you talked about. You
Right.
latch onto that idea, then the next person can go, "Oh man, look at what they did," I think about someone like a musician, like a uh, uh, what's his name from Faith No More, Mike Patton.
Yep.
How that guy, like, he's sort of a bent cog. He's like in the music industry. It's like he didn't just do this one thing. He started doing a bunch of different things and did whatever he liked. And some of it sounds like Broadway singing, and some of it sounds like metal, and some of it's screaming, and some of it's beautiful
Right.
operatic stuff. And someone like him makes it okay for somebody like me to experiment with different things because then I'm not scared to experiment with those things anymore. Like whereas before, like someone has to be the innovator, someone has to step out on the ledge, and I'm not saying he did that for everyone, but I'm just using him as an example. Like he stepped out on a ledge, he did something different, and then that allows everyone else to go, oh yeah, I think I'll step out on the ledge too. Um, so I don't know. I don't remember how we got off on the subject, but I just ran my mouth about it for
Yeah, we're just talking
15
about
minutes.
like
So,
potential, and
you know,
it's just can someone have too much potential where it's like it's not what they want, it's what other people. It's almost like I'm trying to think. You look at Eli and Peyton Manning, their father
Hmm.
Archie Manning. Now they have a younger
Yeah.
sibling who has the weight of the world on his shoulders to be like his brothers or
Well,
uh,
it's their nephew, Arch
nephew.
Manning. Yeah.
Right. So it's like they have this lineage where they have to. This kid now has to live up to the rest of the family. It's like, is that potential that's forced upon, or is it like because of your last name and because of what the family's done, this potential you have that you have to fall through with this? Like you can't be
It,
anything but.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It depends. It depends on whether that's what makes him tick. I mean, it could be either. It could be that that kid is doing it because it's a legacy and he has to do it. And he doesn't have a choice. He could be doing it because he really wants to do it and he loves it.
Right.
But one thing's for sure is it's going to be difficult.
No, just
It's
scrutiny.
it's it's going to be wild. Anything great is wildly difficult, man. Like uh uh anything uh uh Jordan Peterson had a great way of putting this. I thought this was fantastic. He goes, uh, if there's a dragon, then somewhere around is treasure, right? There's always going to be treasure. Wherever there's a dragon, the dragon's keeping the gold somewhere, right? Um, but you can't just walk up to the treasure and grab it. You got to go through the dragon to get it. So if you're going through, the point being is if you're going through something difficult, there is treasure around to be found in that thing. Uh, that what reason why I'm saying this because someone like Arch Manning, who's this college kid that's playing at University of Texas, um, I think he was a freshman this last year and he played in a couple of games and did really well. But he's got the pedigree, right? He's a Manning.
Correct.
He's
Correct.
he's wearing number 16. He's wearing Peyton's number,
Yeah.
Um, and but it's going to be wildly difficult. He's going to have to battle that dragon to get to the treasure. And if the treasure is not what he really wants, then he's probably not going to win the battle with the dragon. Like you have to, like I have to love what I do. I have to love making music, man, because I've got a great job, but it's extremely difficult. And it is for me, it's not an easy thing. It's going to be a battle. I'm going to have to battle the dragon to get to the treasure at the other side.
Right.
If I didn't love battling the dragon, if I didn't love slaying dragons, uh I wouldn't do this. It wouldn't be worth it because
Right.
it's a huge cost. So I think that now can in something like sports and in music, can you care about defeating the dragon so much that that you lose sight of it and the dragon
Yeah.
eats you? Yes, for sure.
Right.
So uh, and that's I've been dangerously close to that recently.
Like
Where like I
driving
think
yourself mad.
yeah, I think I'm letting the dragon eat me now, rather than defeating the dragon. Um, I think that someone like Arch Manning can run uh, that danger as well. You know, um, and there's a third thing, which is you can become so sure that you're going to defeat the dragon, and you're so good at slaying dragons that you become careless, and the dragon eats you, like a Johnny Manziel or something.
Right.
Endless potential. Like Johnny Manziel had, like people talk about that, man, and I didn't really
Oh,
see it because
he had a
I didn't
rocket
like it.
ship.
I didn't like his personality, so I never paid attention to his talent because I
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
hate loud, bombastic people.
Yeah.
Um, but evidently, by all accounts, everyone that I've heard talk about it come up a lot recently. John Gruden was talking about. John Gruden's with Barstool now, so he was talking about it, and he said that like I've never seen more potential in somebody. I thought Johnny Manziel was going to be the next Joe Montana, great quarterback. Like there was nothing standing in his way except for his ego and himself, and he washed out because of it. Now, those are maybe three potential things for Arch Manning. If you're talking about just using him as an example, um, you know, is he trying to live up to something that he doesn't want to do, but he feels like he has to? Then I think the dragon will eat him because it won't be worth it.
Right.
Does he really love it? Does he love playing football? Does he love being a quarterback? Does he love the pressure? You know, because he was born and bred to do this thing. He'll probably be really successful because he loves what he's doing. Maybe he won't, I'm saying won't be. Maybe he won't live up. Maybe he won't rise to that level. Of the other Mannings. But he'll enjoy what he's doing and he'll be
Right.
competent at it, right? But then, man, like let's just hope that it doesn't go to his head, right?
Hmm.
But that's something in that family, though. You have to look at it like they're Archie Manning, like the grandfather or the
Yes.
dad, seems to be the only one that's got an ego. Like he's got an ego. He basically negotiated where his sons were going to go to college and negotiated their NFL contracts, like where they were going to play and how it was going to be and
Yeah.
all of this stuff. But it seems like, and I don't know because I'm not around, but it seems like Eli and Peyton are very like kind of not big-headed about what they do. They were in the game. Maybe that got passed down to Arch from their brother. Their brother, some people don't know, but there was a third Manning brother who was a wide receiver.
Yeah. Maybe
Um,
the best athlete
and
in that family.
yeah, and he had a neck injury and had to stop playing. This
Yeah.
is his son, I believe, is who Arch is. But um, uh, you know, but I mean, dude, you have to like. I would think you'd have to grow up loving football in that family. Like, I don't know if it's kind of like
Correct.
me growing up in a musical family. Like, I didn't have a choice, you know. But I love music because I was around it all the
Right.
time when I was a kid.
Well,
So
you guys have got a bunch of number ones this week too, which again, every time those come in, I'm
we
just
we
like,
got one. We got one number one this week. Yeah,
well, so what's the difference between media based, active, like all that stuff is confusing to me.
just different charts.
Gotcha.
Media base, Billboard. They're just different charts, but they're pretty congruent. Like they one usually equals the other.
Gotcha.
Um, so we have uh, I think it's 20. Is it 24 media base number ones and 22 Billboard number ones or
Okay, that's
something?
what I saw.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, but they're pretty. They line up pretty good.
So do they both listen to the same account for the same radio stations, or is more one like radio, one's more like streaming? Like, how does that?
No, it's John, I actually don't know the answer to that question.
I mean,
I don't know how they
this
I
is
don't know
right in
I don't know
Brad's
who I don't
wheelhouse right
yeah,
now.
dude. Ask Brent Smith. He will do a 3 hour podcast on just that one question. Uh I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I'm okay with showing some ignorance with that. We'll
Just a
have to find
Derek.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try not to pay. I love the fact that those things exist, man. Um, I'm very, very concerned with ever getting comfortable and ever paying too much attention to that. So when we get number ones, man, I'm so grateful. I love our fans. I love the fact that that
Of
exists
course.
so much. But I just glance at it and move on, and um, try to keep concentrating on making new things. And so I don't dwell in those things too much. And maybe I should. Maybe I should dwell in them more. Maybe I would be a happier person if I just took half a second and patted myself on the back or patted us on the back a little bit. Um, rewards and awards have never sat well with me. Like Kelly was talking to me the other day. She goes, "Hey, we need to go get your car and drive it around." And I'm like, because I have a Aston Martin that I bought. I love Aston Martins. I have a DB11, and I love that car. It's sweet, man. It's such a and again, man, it's such a blessing. It's like I almost feel guilty about even owning it or the
Is this
boat.
the car you
I just
drove to Rockville a couple years ago?
yeah,
Okay, got it. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but she's like, we need to get your car out and drive it. And I was like, man, I was like, that car is a reward, and I haven't earned it right now. Like I haven't earned picking that car up
Interesting.
and driving it around
Yeah.
yet. Like I'm in the middle of trying to put my record out and make these videos, and I've got to really am at a point of like, I have to dig in and do this Shinedown record. Even though right now, honestly, I don't feel like doing a Shinedown record. I'm tired and you know, I don't know what I have to offer creatively right now, but I have to dig in and do it, whether I want to or not.
Right.
And so I probably won't see that car until the Shinedown record's finished, and then I'll allow myself to enjoy it some. Uh, in the meantime, I, you know, I drive the old 1996 Ford Ranger around the property or whatever,
Yeah.
um, or I walk uphill both ways in the snow to everywhere
What
I have to go.
so I'm coming down what next weekend?
Yeah, something
The
like that.
7th or yeah. So I'm planning on seeing some alligators, dolphins and sharks in
Yeah,
some brackish water.
we can do that. The
Yeah.
water's super clear right now, man. Up in the north, up in the north of Charleston Harbor. I'm south of Charleston Harbor. North of Charleston Harbor right now. I was flying in. We flew in from New York the other day, and the water in the inlets and all was like this color. Like it was super blue. The water's super clear right now.
Yeah.
That's why I sent you that we were up in the Folly River, which is a little more north than I am. Well, it's just the other side of the Stono River, which is where I am. But right behind Folly Beach. And I sent you those pictures of those dolphins bow riding off of the boat, and the water's super clear up in there too right now. I think that's probably why they were doing that, is because it's like usually like our water gets super murky during the summertime. Like when you get a lot of tannins in the water and a lot of like plankton-y growth and
Yeah.
stuff, and you don't really see blue water until you get about 2 miles offshore, and then the water turns blue. But inland, it stays pretty churned up and murky during the summertime. But man, during the wintertime, it'll get super clear.
Yeah, I
So
love it.
uh, that that's that's where we're at right now. It's super clear out.
You reminded me just then because I was supposed to when you sent those videos. I asked you the question: are there laws where if you stopped your boat and play with the dolphins, are you allowed to do that? And like I was gonna see like
Yeah, no, they discourage that, man. It's illegal to feed dolphins. It's illegal
which
because
makes
they don't
sense.
they don't want them getting used to being coming up to boats,
Correct.
because they can get injured, man. Like we have a lot. Like it's sad, dude. We
Do you have
we have
manatees
we
down there too?
yeah, not as much, but we get them.
But
Yeah,
like
I've,
they
I've
can hit like
seen.
the rotors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've had one up here in right behind the house, well down a little bit, but in this inlet we're in now, and up in Mount Pleasant, which is north of the harbor, there's um, in a place called Shem Creek. Every year there's some manatees that come up in Shem Creek because the shrimp boats come in there and
Yeah, throw their
they throw all the
shit.
stuff into the water right there off the shrimp boat, and the manatees just well, I guess the manatees don't eat that, but they hang out, and maybe that's not why they hang out in there. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Now that I'm thinking about it, they're herbivores, but um, they hang out up in Shem Creek for some reason. So uh, anyway, it's uh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's uh,
I'm also gonna
so,
take all the pears off your pear tree. Do that again.
dude.
And
Like I'm
then
not bullshitting you about that story, man. Like gone overnight, all of the pears disappeared, gone.
just fascinating.
Yeah, it's happened more than once. I'm not so sure there's not a Bigfoot around.
What well, I think this is a good episode. I mean, I know you got press and stuff, so
Yeah, I guess it was okay. Uh I sent you that Chris Bledsoe. I thought it was interesting. See, I think I sent you right before we came on
yeah,
about for Danny Jones' podcast talking about how his Chris Bledsoe episode was the only
got
episode he's
nuked.
ever had that got nuked and throttled by YouTube, and someone else's did as well when they were talking about it.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, man.
Well, it's kind of yeah, I
And it's
mean
also why like Sean Ryan interviewed him recently, and there Sean Ryan like had some sort of trepidation about putting it out. Like there were like he was, and I can't figure out what that was. Like was he threatened about it or whatever? Because he had to like make a point. Like here is the full unedited Chris Bledsoe episode. Like he
yeah,
usually doesn't put stuff out like that, and I don't
well,
know
I
why.
also think it's one of those things where the subject matter is so divisive
Uh,
where I think people above that control that certain stuff don't want that knowledge or even that discussion, even the
yeah,
idea of what's being discussed of the consciousness and the spirituality attached to the phenomena
dude.
of UFOs and stuff. So it's like I get why people because the information came out. I mean, Tucker Carlson's talked about it. These other higher up rated people
Yeah,
have said,
spiritual man.
yeah, you think these aliens are here to fight us or they're warlike, but no, it's the exact opposite. It's like they're actually it's more spiritually related as opposed to uh, like scientific, if that makes sense.
Yep, that makes total sense. And I,
So
I don't think that we've talked about that, man. I definitely think that it's spiritual in nature, and uh, again, back to maybe full circle in our conversation about how the darkness doesn't want those things to be present, you know. So keep it
yeah,
at bay.
we gotta. And I've spoken with Chris Bledsoe. We gotta do an episode with him. But I
We
mean,
should.
we'll probably get throttled and abducted. But
Yeah,
I'm at the point now where I'm like, you know what? Just put the. You don't have to agree or disagree, but just have the balls to fucking have the discussion and just throw it out there. And if it
yep,
gets throttled, like if it's too on the nose, I mean, I mean, I care because it's like it's not fair that that words and discussions that aren't based in hate or uh, gross rhetoric are still censored in this day and age. So,
Yep.
but
Yeah. Well, that's why we're here to talk about ridiculous things.
and if we don't talk about it, some other two imbeciles will, and I feel bad
So
for those
it's
people.
out there in the ether, and other imbeciles will have the same conversation we just had.
Right.
So
Who
what are
love
we gonna do?
K-pop. Yeah. So
Yeah.
awesome. Later.